Thank you, Benedict. It now gives me immense happiness to finally invite our special guest for today, Professor Mahesh Rangarajan. For anyone in the environmental space, Professor Rangarajan needs no introduction. One of the foremost environmental historians of India, he has been recognized globally for his finely crafted narratives on the history of wildlife and conservation. His first book, Fencing the Forest, was published in 1996, and his most recent co-edited work, At Nature's Edge, was published in 2018. Another co-edited work, Nature Contested, is in press. I would urge you to browse his books at the Attagalata stall in the foyer. They're truly an education, not just in environmental history, but also on how to write it. Professor Rangarajan teaches history and environmental studies at Ashoka University. He has taught at the universities of Delhi, Jadavpur, and Cornell, been the director of the Nehru Museum and Library, and VC at Kriya University. Today, Professor Rangarajan will be talking to us about the joys of writing on the environment. Sir, please, if you could come on stage.
Thank you, Megha. It's an accurate introduction on where I teach, Ashoka University. Rest of it, please discount 50%, because though I've just met Megha a few minutes ago, I feel as if I've known her, because she's known to all of us because of taking the findings of historians who can't possibly write as engagingly as she does. It's a great privilege and pleasure to be here. I'm even happier that so many people have come indoors on a day when we would all like to be outdoors. I thought I'd begin with something which may not seem related to Green Literature Festival, which is, I'm sure many people in this room and many people known to us are following the Soccer World Cup. And soccer is played, of course, with a football. And soccer is the American word for football. Everywhere in the world it's football. In America they call it soccer. Americans anyway have a way of renaming things. What we thought is the bison in America is known as the buffalo. And when Americans say panther or tiger, they mean something called a cougar or mountain lion. Believe me, it's much smaller than any tiger or lion you know. So if you see an American book and it says lion, it's not the lion we know from Gir Forest in Africa. But you know, a football is a good place to begin, because one of the ways to understand the larger challenge of the question of nature or of having a habitable, safe living environment is to put it as simply that everything that we know that lives or has ever lived, that includes the most famous dinosaur in history, T-Rex. So I used to take my daughter and a couple of kids to the bus stop. I promised her I wouldn't tell stories about her. She's 25, so she might hear me somewhere on YouTube. And there was a little boy who used to pester me with questions every day. And he'd say, "Uncle, aapko pata hai T-Rex kya hai?" I said, "T-Rex is a dinosaur." He said, "Uska naam T-Rex nahi hai, uska naam hai Tyrannosaur." And of course he roared, "Ah!" And I got really scared. Everything that ever lived, including our good friend the Tyrannosaur, all the creatures that live, scream, shout, grow, the microorganisms, lives within something called the biosphere. It's a very thin film on the surface of the planet. It includes the land, the waters, the air. This biosphere is as thick as the layer of paint on a football. That's the biosphere. That is the home of life as we know it. All life that ever lived or has lived so far has been within the biosphere. Even were humans to discover life on other planets, we all hope we do, and each of us hopes we meet the first alien, no idea what it will be like, must remember that will be the second home of life for us. And something important happened after the end of the Second World War. Humans acquired the power, not all humans, very few humans, to destroy all life on Earth. This enormous destructive power was released in 1945 in Los Alamos, where the first nuclear explosion took place. It's a very important line in the Upanishads, which was quoted by Oppenheimer, that I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. It's put much better by another author who wrote about the danger of the nuclear weapon race in the 80s, Jonathan Schell. He said a nuclear war will not mean the death of life alone. It will mean something we cannot imagine, the death of death. See, once there is no life, there will be no death. But what is very important is that the movements for peace are as old as the movements for war. And much of the last century has been about a movement for peace. Because as humans, some nations, some countries, some armies acquired the power not only to destroy life, but to make Earth uninhabitable. So long years ago, two of us went for a debating competition. And my junior was a better speaker. We had to speak on the danger of nuclear weapons. And he won the first prize. He told a joke. It's not a joke, it's a very macabre joke, but he claimed he made it up. And of course, we won the prize. He said, Mr. Chairman, my fear of nuclear war is not that everyone in this room will not see tomorrow. My fear is there will be survivors, and my grandchild will be born with 99 teeth and a tail. I think he got it right. We are talking about substances being released into the atmosphere, the soil, the water, which will outlie humanity. You know, when you're told that something has a half-life of 50,000 years, it's beyond the imagination. In 50,000 years, half of that material will cease to be radioactive. Another 50,000 years, the next half, and so on and so forth. So these huge transformations in the earth also resulted in people rethinking how to live on the earth. And I think it's important to emphasize that one of the people who played a very important role at the world stage was a woman. She couldn't complete her science degrees because she supported her family. She worked as a professional researcher, and she did something remarkable. Everyone in this room will hope we do that. She began to earn a living by writing. She wrote about nature. She wrote about science. She wrote 3 award-winning novels on the sea. And in 1962, she wrote a very simple book called Silent Spring. Silent Spring was about the contamination of the environment by pesticides. But at the end of Silent Spring, she posed a question. She said that the choice is ours. And she argued that it's a tragedy that this mindless chemical technology, which has given us the power to destroy a few insects, is making us wage war against the earth. And Carson argued, and I think it's very important, that entomology, the science of insects, she used very strong words. She was a marine biologist. I have to say this because of what she said about entomologists. She says entomology is Stone Age science. See, in the Stone Age, Carson surmised, people were trying to work out how to use stones to kill animals. That's the way they thought, because it was a question of us or them. Now, I'm told the Stone Age was more complicated, but we won't go there. What she argued is that there's a choice about knowledge. Instead of technology for mastery of science, or of the earth, of other living creatures, you could have science that is allied to life. Science that tries to understand how nature exists, so that the interventions we make, and we will make interventions. You will make interventions against insects to save against malaria. You would make it against viruses to save from COVID-19. You may do it with larger animals or birds or plants that come in the way of production. But the way that it is done, be allied with life. And I think that this is the larger reason why the environmental movement is similar to other movements of justice and change. The movement for freedom of nations, movement for equality of gender, movement for equality across race or caste or sexual orientation or anything. Because this movement does something very few movements have done. It doesn't just talk about the future, generations yet unborn. It talks about other species, other landscapes, other seascapes. It is a movement which is both about ourselves, humanity, particular group of people we are and where we live and what we do, but it's also a movement which seeks to evoke a larger sense of ethical responsibility. Now, as you know, people who are passionate are divided. And I was observing the various books outside. There are people who are passionate about bats. There are others who are fascinated by birds. There are people who write about the forest. There are people who write about the mountain. There are those who think technology is the answer. There are those who think science has to frame a new question. There are those who think, and Benedict put it so well, the question is, what can I do? What is it that I can do? So this reminds me of a very interesting phenomenon, because I teach a lot of undergraduates. And I found undergraduates are exactly as they were when I was an undergraduate. They love to listen to music, rock, pop, and other things. And there's one song in pop and rock which is very famous. It's there in all the different languages. It says, I want to be free. So I ask you, I want to be free. Everyone in this room will say yes. We all want to be free. The question which we rarely ask is, free from what? Free from whom? The students will say, free from you. You know, you're boring us. We want to go out and have a good time. You might want to be free from, being subject to this lecture early in the morning when you want to go out and pick up the book you'll read. But the notion of freedom is not only about being free from someone or something.
It's also about free to exercise the right to live with dignity, but to do so in a way that takes care of the dignity and well-being of others. And I think that this is something very intrinsic to movements that take up the issue of nature, whether it's safety at the workplace, whether it's the question of chemical contamination, whether an extinct species, whether it's a dying ecological system. And in recent years, particularly the last 50 years, something very important has happened, and I think we should acknowledge it. The nations of the earth have come together and pledged that they take the environment seriously. Now, we all know one of the interesting things about politics is that what people say is often very different from what people do. But that's the nature of social change. Social change is about holding people who are powerful to the pledges they make. And it is a fact. The choices cannot possibly be easy. They cannot be easy, particularly because we are living through a period of epochal changes. I was just looking at my notes, and it occurred to me that, in the early 70s, when the first Stockholm conference was held in 1972, there were enormous transformations taking place across the earth. India launched Project Tiger, which was a project to save the animal which had just become the national animal. I don't know if you know this, but the tiger became the national animal by stealing the lion's throne. The Indian Board for Wildlife in its wisdom decided in 1972 that the lion, which had been national animal for 3 years, shouldn't be the national animal. And the then chair of the Project Tiger steering committee, Dr. Karan Singh, whose name, incidentally, surname Singh means lion, denied that this was because his nickname was Tiger. And he explained that the tiger would be a symbol of unity in diversity in India. So India is a diverse country, many languages, many faiths, many ideologies, many cultures. But the tiger, which was found in 11 states, would unify Indians. It would unify Indians as a symbol. It would also unify Indians to be more responsible for other living creatures. So the tiger, in a sense, or Project Tiger, was a wake-up call to save the vanishing fauna and flora. He was then asked, what about the lion? And he said, but the lion is found in only one state. And he could have added that the lion then became the state animal of Gujarat. This has led to a very interesting situation. At that time, there were 9 tiger reserves. They were declared a year later. Today, there are 52. There are tiger reserves in most of the Indian states. By the way, since then, the number of states has also gone up. It's 28. I mean, they divided up the same states, so Sikkim got added. But interestingly, with the lion, the fact that the lion became state animal of Gujarat was preceded by very important attempts to secure its future. And it's very significant that today the number of lions is over 700. In the late 60s, it was less than 200, about 177. Because in India, they give very exact counts, They give you an exact number of animals, which most scientists will tell you is impossible, and fortunately, they've stopped doing that. But interestingly, the range of the lion has also expanded. Much of the range of the lion is outside of the Gir forest. I was told I should talk about the joy of writing on the environment. There's a greater joy today, which is scanning YouTube. I'm told it matches, no writer can match it, so I won't try. But just see lions of Gujarat, nomad lions, you'll be astonished. These are amateur videos shot. Somebody is going on a motorbike, there's a lioness on the road. Then the lioness walks past. 10 people are sleeping outside on charpoys. Suddenly they hear a sound. They all get up, there's 2 lions eating a donkey or a buffalo. So they all get up and start clicking, and the lions don't harm them. This is very important. The lion has expanded its range, but the level of conflict with people is limited. The lions here behave different from lions elsewhere. But the people there have learned how to live with them. So I think that one of the very important things, I don't want to romanticize this, there is still a problem. The lions are very inbred. Ideally, there ought to be a second population in a second place. But the same powerful regional pride in the lion, the reason the lions are the joy of the people of Gujarat, makes it difficult to make that politically acceptable. And I think there is a challenge for those who believe in a future for lions to explain that even if there were to be another pride of lions in another place, it would still be the second home of the Gir lion. Gir and Gujarat will always be the first home. So there's a paradox here. On the one hand, the environmental movement urges us to talk about the planet, to talk about humanity, talk about justice, to talk about others, other people, other environments, other habitats. But many efforts to tackle the environment begin in a specific time and place. So how do we deal with this contradiction? And believe me, there is no one answer. There can't be one answer. We can have a sense of an approach. That approach would be that the quest for material dignity, for human dignity in our century, still young century, only 23 years old. I hope young people don't feel insulted by saying 23 is old, because I'm sure that for some very young people, 23 must seem not so young. To me, it seems young. You can guess my age. But on a more serious note, the struggle for human dignity, materially and in terms of being able to achieve your full potential actualization, today cannot make sense without working for a peace with nature. And in the wake of COP27, that means they've had 27 conference of parties, all these guys getting together, coming out with the declarations. The critical issue is that whatever choices are made now may have consequences for the future. Some of those consequences are unknown to us, but enough is known to be cautious as well as decisive. And that is why the struggle and the question of the environment is not simply one about protest, survive, wake up. It's also about developing a deep sense of curiosity and wonder about the world around us. And it's fascinating to go back to Rachel Carson and remember that one of the things she did was to observe nature around us, the birds in her garden, the insects that flit about, the way the soil relates to the water. Because this larger quest of keeping the fabric of life intact is not about the fabric alone. It's because we are part of that fabric. So are we unraveling the fabric, or are we restoring it? Are we maintaining it and renewing it, or are we tearing it apart? That's a question which remains for all of us, a troubling one and an important one. But it's also an engaging one, because there's nothing as exciting as a problem whose time has come. Thank you.
That was a lovely sort of recounting of environmental history and also of writing and so many sort of rich narratives all in one. And it's great that you brought in the football reference at the beginning. I would now like to request Ms. Kalpana Singh, the administrator at the Parikrama Schools, to facilitate Professor Rangarajan. Can we have the... Yeah.
Thank you. My thank
you. Have we got a picture? And ma'am, before you go a little something from us, this is a token of appreciation. It's by our gifting partner Tamala, who make gifts out of recycled wood. Do check out their stall at the gallery upstairs. And thank you so much, ma'am and sir. It was a lovely morning.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. And I thank you for thoroughly flattering me.